You want to stop wasting time online? I don't want to waste your time online. Here's the outline for the video. Watch the whole thing or click to the parts you want. Now you may lose some context just jumping around or reading the chapter titles, but it's your life, do what you want. I'm sharing my experiences because maybe something that worked for me could spark something in your psyche that helps you in some way. Take what resonates with you. If it doesn't, that's okay. Once upon a time, a typical day for me would be wake up! Instagram and Reddit on the iPhone. Twitter. Let's just say being terminally online was not ideal, so I put in an effort to change. My aim was not eating the internet entirely to become some productivity super ninja. I like the internet. It's pretty cool. It was a matter of recalibrating my internal connection to my internet connection and improving my mental health and all that good shit. The core foundational philosophy to these 6 practices is making conscious what's unconscious, knowing what you're doing and why you're doing it, building awareness, interrupting automatic patterns, learning how one begins and quits, etc. Mindfulness, very poggers, based. I'll be mentioning certain programs / extensions and using website specific examples, but don't get too hung up on the details. Keep in mind the macro purpose of what I'm getting at. These practices work in tandem with each other. There is no single magic bullet. They help me go from an internet zombie to where I am now, a more modest denizen of the internet. What the fuck? Running out of time. Limiting the time online. Seems like a no-brainer. The program that was instrumental in this process was a website app blocker called Focus Me. Since browser extensions in Chrome could be disabled with a right click or by downloading another internet browser entirely, I needed an application for the whole computer that was difficult to bypass, that could take the choice out of my hands, and customizable in how you set up your blocking plans. Focus Me fit all those criteria. This isn't an ad. Any application with comparable features would work just as well. Don't get hung up on the details. But there are different ways to set up the blocking. I started with launch limits where I could access social media sites a certain number of times per day for a set time, but eventually settled on a single overall time limit. The plans would run automatically each day, with the rules being A, social media was blocked until the afternoon / evening, and B, I could only be on a site for a set amount of time. B was important because A, delaying gratification wasn't enough for me to curb my overall time online. Once I could access them, I'd end up using these websites for hours on end, so having that set endpoint was crucial. On Reddit, whereas before I lazily scroll around various subreddits, getting caught up in this never-ending loop of clicking stuff because it's easy, being online with a ticking clock created a sense of urgency. You only have so much time to get through your usual browse, and if you waste time on this one post, you may not have time for this other post. You might think I'd be an anxious wreck during this whole process. I discovered the opposite. Rather than mindlessly scrolling, I became more deliberate with how I was using the site and what I was searching for. Not being able to get sucked up into the social media groove because day to day, I get through all the posts I wanted with time to spare, coming to the realization that I was wasting more time than I needed simply because I could. Once I finished, I made sure to block Reddit and then move on to YouTube, Twitter, rinse and repeat. I'd even apply this to the whole internet once I was done with it, making a habit out of quitting for the day. The shift from looking for content updates every hour or so to once in a 24-hour time frame blunted this feeling of I need it now. Using just the A, there's still that natural itch, because fresh content. But with B, since I only had so much time with it once I got to it, I paid more attention to the experience. I started to recognize when my enjoyment declined, almost as if I was timing myself to see when I would reach the threshold to content satisfaction. Oh, that's it. I'm done. There's plenty of content, but much of it didn't seem as important as it felt before. You don't need it right away because even when you get it, it's fine, it's okay. You get less itchy. It's like taking Dupixent for your brain. While online, I would also try to interrupt the algorithm. You can't really isolate the internet. All these sites link to each other. A Reddit post leads to a tweet, leads to a YouTube video. So I tried cutting off as much algorithmic fat as I could. On YouTube, I used Chrome extensions like Unhook, which customize the YouTube experience by removing the home page and sidebar recommendations. Also, Sponsor Block, which removes the ad. For a while, I straight up disabled my YouTube algorithm by deleting my search and watch history. If you don't like how certain videos are being recommended to you, that's usually the culprit. When I turn my algorithm back on, I would clear up my homepage by clicking not interested or don't recommend channel, hiding videos or tossing them into watch later. On occasion, I turn on the sidebar recommendations for some zest to see if there are any videos worth checking out, but the key thing here is that you're being deliberate in controlling the algorithm and not letting it control you. On Reddit, I got rid of the infinite scroll by switching to old Reddit, disabling the never-ending Reddit with RES, and sometimes I went mega extreme hardcore by using text from the URL to limit it to one page only. I filtered out all these subreddits from r/all that didn't add any value, made me go or would send me down rabbit holes. I cleaned up my homepage by curating my subscriptions, and I had a checklist for any additional subs that I found interesting, but I didn't want cluttering up my home feed. I deleted Twitter for a while, but I still enjoy the occasional tweet, so I undeleted and unfollowed everyone, only using the search function for specific accounts. Being deliberate, no endless feed. With certain apps, this may be difficult to do. On TikTok, the functionality and the algorithm are so interwoven. What it lacks in connection with the rest of the internet, it makes up for by keeping you within an ecosystem that you have less control over. I could never really get into TikTok. Much of the content never appealed to me. Most of it gets reposted to other platforms anyways, or through other content creators creating content and reacting to the content on TikTok, so I can get my TikTok fill. The overall takeaway is that messing with the algorithmic design effectively disrupts this never-ending interconnected internet. Not perfectly, but better. We're aiming for better. This is the ultimate way to interrupt the algorithm. You go where there is no algorithm. On Reddit, it's easy to look at a silly meme in 2 seconds. However, if I wanted to sink my teeth into an in-depth discussion, this created a problem. How could I get more time for that without compromising on the time limit, or running the risk of getting distracted by infinite everything else? The solution? Get those threads offline. I previously used the Evernote clipper to clip full web pages for offline reading, but it wasn't working when I tried capturing footage. Fortunately, there are alternative solutions, like using Nimbus Capture. That's the basic idea. So rather than having infinite tabs open with multiple threads, I just chuck them into the clipper and save them for later. Without this constant barrage of next thing, next thing, next thing, you slow down, read things at your leisure, taking time to absorb them. With YouTube, the problem was videos could be anywhere from 5 minutes to 50 minutes. I didn't want to be on the site for that long, but still be able to watch some longer content. Watching at 2x speed all the time doesn't do it for me. The solution? Download the videos. Treating YouTube time like a Blockbuster visit. Remember those? There's lots of website design tomfoolery that keeps you on here. YouTubers trying to get you to binge their content or make hours-long videos, because longer watch time on their videos equals longer time on platform equals YouTube pushing their content equals attention equals money. Hard to go down a YouTube rabbit hole if you are on YouTube. I understand the desire to support your favorite creators and all that. In my defense, the videos had plenty of views already. It was passive consumption for me. Currently, I'm a touch more active in participation, so to show support, if I download a video and it touches my heart, I'll type up a comment, go back to the video, post it, drop a like, and subscribe if I like them. You can download my videos if you want, even though I am a small channel and could really use the engagement. But whatever, it's fine. If it digs you out of the hole, I won't be offended. Please like, comment, and subscribe though. It's really easy. All this online stuff is too easy to access. It takes less than a finger swipe to access all the entertainment ever. Imagine if every day before logging on to your favorite internet fun zone, you had to run a 5K. Without that 5K, no content for you. Would you do it? Would you get into shape, or would you go, screw it? That's the idea behind this practice. Creating the right level of resistance so it takes less effort than zero to access the cool zone. Making it harder to do the easy things than it is to do the hard things. For instance, with app blocking plans, when I didn't use force mode, the passwords were set to custom random characters. I could unlock the plans, however, I didn't want to type out this.
Oh, great heavens!
On the iPhone, there is built-in screen time, which is not just a source of data. It can be useful for app limits or disabling the App Store, but I found it easy to circumvent with its 4-digit passcode. In order to forget the passcode, I'd write out a random numbered sequence and put it somewhere. You could always give your passcode to a trusted confidant or mess around with the family settings. I wanted to see if I could do it for myself. Another thing I tried was putting certain logins on an external USB and chucking it into the other room. That way, with the app deleted, App Store blocked, and logins out of reach, I couldn't spend that extra half an hour in the morning in my bed checking Instagram. I compromised on other platforms by deleting the Reddit and Twitter apps off my phone, only using social media on the iOS Chrome app without logins and restricted functionality. This sort of worked for a while, but cracks began to emerge, and I began to recognize a fatal flaw. These buffers weren't right for me, and if I kept going, I would reach the level of absurdity. I can make separate emails for separate accounts with their own passwords and put them on separate USBs with their own passwords, infusing them with the power power of Horcruxes and scattering them across the globe. It still wouldn't be enough. If you keep adding layers to the buffer, yet you keep resisting that ever-increasing buffer, at a certain point, you're not dealing with the actual problem anymore. That level of resistance requires introspection. So I weighed out the pros and cons and decided to remove every internet/social media app off my phone completely. I didn't like how automatic my reaching into pocket to get phone behavior had become, or how distracting it was, or the constant need to have my phone on me 24/7. I took the usual steps, turning off non-essential notifications, setting up do not disturb downtimes, physically putting the phone out of reach when I'm not using it, and decluttering the home screen. Phone use was strictly for logging offline data, note-taking, Spotify, and communication. Having the computer taken care of and an outlet for reasonable internet use, this alleviated the pressure worrying about all these devices, putting the disciplinary load towards not using the internet on my phone. Easier said than done. That's why there are the rest of these practices. I needed a way to get objectable, measurable feedback. Accountability. How would I know if I was on the right track? Fortunately, the Focus Me app has built-in time tracking for each second spent in applications or online. That'll work. So being the absolute data whore that I am, I yoinked that information, did some math, and plugged it into an Excel spreadsheet to create this monstrosity. Yikes. Accounting for sleep and overall time awake, I calculated how much time I was spending in front of a screen, how much of that time was spent online, and various percentages depending on operating system, certain applications, certain websites, etc. Before implementing the system, my screen time was, well, bleh. Some people may say that's a lot. Others may retort, those are rookie numbers. Doesn't matter. It's a real eye-opener when you have the cold hard facts to show that you spent half your waking life in front of a screen or online. After implementing time tracking, app limits, and all this stuff, my time online was literally cut in half, approximately. Sticking to the system reduced my average online time to about 3 hours daily. Yay, progress. All these statistics may seem like overkill, however, not all screen time is created equally. Ideally, you should get away from the glowing rectangle every now and then, but if you spend 8 hours in front of a computer and 6 of those hours was doing something constructive, it's different than passively consuming content. Listening to a podcast while you're exercising or having Twitch going on in the background while you're working isn't the same as if you were doing so while mindlessly browsing the internet. For instance, with this additional offline time, my screen time shifted towards music production, much more fulfilling and productive. Yeah. Bobbin, yeah. What ended up being the most crucial element was the journaling reflections. I always found that writing things down helps clarify all this mind chaos. There were 3 exercises that complemented the previous 5 things. Number 1, a YouTube reflections video tracker. I couldn't think of a better name. After switching to Sunday Fun Day, that's what I'm calling it, and downloading a couple of videos for the week, I began to keep a log of what content I watched. Categorized as either entertainment or learning, I'd answer 2 questions. Did I get any value from it? Was the video worth watching? Yes. Meh. No. Here's what I discovered. Number 1, I was watching more videos for entertainment than I thought. What I would categorize as knowledge was actually being used for entertainment. Number 2, I got value from only about a third of the videos. And number 3, I became aware of the trends and the types of content I was clicking on. Through these reflections, I started to internalize that many of those videos that caught my interest weren't really that satisfying. No offense to the content creator. When you write down, I binged this YouTube channel because I was anxious and it wasn't worth it, this does 2 things. 1, you realize what sorts of mental and emotional states trigger you to go down the rabbit hole. And 2, the end result, what it feels like right after. You notice how certain content makes you feel, what kinds of emotions they are trying to provoke, how you got there in the first place, etc, etc, etc. Mindfulness. Very poggers. Based. The second exercise was along the same lines, taking stock of all the threads I had saved in my Evernote, categorizing them, noticing the trends. What kind of post was I reading? Why did I click this? What was I going through? What was I looking for? What did I get out of it? Working through all that by putting it right dead center. Last was a general daily reflection to get a macro view of all of this. This was ripped off from somewhere, I don't know, I can't remember. What filled me with enthusiasm today? What drained me of energy today? What did I learn about myself today? It's a great way to gain perspective. Yeah. These are the 6 main things I did to cut down on my internet social media content consumption, but I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the issue of scope as it pertains to this video, because your behaviors don't exist in a vacuum. They're all connected and there's always a larger context. I'm skimming over many personal details, how I tackled dieting, exercise, emotional and financial support, therapy, the ups and downs, etc. But it all played a role and I struggled less in some areas than others. It's easy to tell someone just go outside and touch grass, but you don't know where they've been or where they're at, especially if they're an audience of diverse strangers. That's why I find internet advice to be all over the place. When I say you, as if I'm giving advice to you, it's me projecting I onto the royal you. I'm also bringing up the issue of scope and the larger context to now illustrate a key point, that the little steps you take today can have unforeseen ramifications down the line. Both the positive ones and supposed negatives in one area can branch out into something completely different. Everything connects. Years ago, after going through a depressive episode that completely wrecked my sleep schedule, I acted bit by bit to improve myself. I gravitated towards journaling short paragraphs after I woke up and tried nudging back my bedtime. Waking up after a good night's sleep at an appropriate time and then having, wow, clarity, felt better than the brain fog of staying up late and sleeping in. I followed all the sleep routine tips, but nothing would have stuck if I didn't find value in it. Better sleep, more energy during the day, not feeling so crappy, improved overall mental health, gradually adding other routines around exercise and eating well, internalizing the compounding positive reinforcement until it became second nature. I was still prone to wasting hours online each day. However, those prior experiences laid the groundwork for these 6 practices. Leveraging good sleep is very cool, aided with getting offline and not having those late night zombie scrolls. Adding the time limits to journaling and the rest only strengthen that routine. Looking back from the next day, all those late night tweets and videos turned into one big blur. Is this piece of content really worth losing sleep over? It'll be there tomorrow. What feels immediate today probably won't be that important in a week. Culture keeps chugging along. Any additional content won't do anything for you. Log off and go to bed. Through this whole process, I was learning a mechanism that creates quit. Something that gets you to stop doing what you're doing. If this is part of your late night binge and a gorilla bursts through your door, what are you doing?
It's time to stop!
But it's not just about the quit. It's also interrupting the beginning. Whatever gets you started with the habit, set and setting, time and place. That's where app blocking or delayed gratification becomes useful. It breaks you out of these automatic patterns. Another way is to tie these mechanisms to a physical sensation. This involves understanding and managing your energy throughout the day, taking note of your behavior or mood, what drains you of your energy, and how your body naturally fatigues. With the internet, it's easy to keep going, and as you keep going, it becomes harder to muster the energy to do something else because you're running on empty. Listen to your body, take a break, eat a Snickers. It's about combining that mindfulness with action, which internalizes over time. Base. A tendency of mine has been to overload my brain with information by binging YouTube Reddit content, stemming from a bundled anxiety of not knowing what steps to take next, being afraid, being overwhelmed, feeling like I'm making no progress, not feeling good enough, endless comparisons to others, yada yada yada. I knew what I needed to do, I had all the information, but I still had these emotional blocks causing me to repeat the cycle. I couldn't begin to process that until I did this. Once I was aware of what I was doing, I could slowly unravel this urge to seek out more content, recognizing when and why I wanted to go down these wormholes. The realization that no extra information would help or be satisfying. The awareness of reaching the content fatigue threshold. Remembering viscerally how it felt in the moment and afterwards. The shitty brain fog. The few times you got something good versus the majority of the times you scrolled forever and got nothing. I didn't want to go back to that. There's a bit more to it than blunting the incentive to go and stay online. The internet obviously has some value, and sometimes people turn to it because the alternative is less desirable. Could be boredom, could be escapism. The point is, ideally there should be some positive, active, and meaningful to do away from the online space. What would you do if there was no internet? I cut off the internet. No more internet. Could be a hobby like exercising, music, reading. Could be going out to see real people, or even smaller things like taking short breaks, meditating, getting up, moving around. Practice that TikTok dance.
You got it!
If this sounds like just go outside and touch grass, well look, I can't tell you what to do. Not being online all the time could give you the space to find that meaning. It can be a worthwhile pursuit for its own sake. It was the main focus of my life for a few months. However, not doing something can only sustain you for so long. The whole system collapsed after several months, and not just because I was engrossed with the Canadian Heritage moment. Overcoming that initial resistance to create identity level change is a sort of necessary phase, at least for a little while. Some of my biggest mistakes were trying to do too much, getting obsessed with specific numbers or metrics, and putting myself down when I failed to live up to these lofty goals. Instead of, keeping expectations reasonable, managing where I was at, not some arbitrary standard. Focusing all your energy into not doing something just brings more attention to that something. This methodology can be useful for a while. However, eventually you burn out because the purpose of focusing on all this data is to move beyond it in a sense. You aren't just not doing it for the sake of not doing it. You are not doing it so you do other things. And eventually the doing of other things or reaping the positive benefits overtakes that drive, so you end up not doing it or doing it less. Like I said, the significance of the not doing or being offline is that you create the space to have your own thoughts and discover what makes you tick. You can clear your mind of all this noise pollution, be zen, yada yada yada. But how do you make it stick? Because it's so easy to fall back into it. And I did. Reverting to the old ways. No time tracking, no time limits. There wasn't an I give up moment. It just stopped. Eventually, your perfect productivity system will fail for whatever reason. That's just the way it is. Everything I try turns to shit. I'm a failure and I suck. Woe is me. But did something about that experience click with you? Is there a way to tie that into something else and build on that? Maybe I can sleep on it and come back refreshed. I'm sleeping. It feels like you're starting from scratch again and again, but it's not all or nothing. Not only can you take the pieces and apply it to the next thing, you can learn from failure and recontextualize it through experience. It's not like, well, I've written this down, wow, I understand myself, and now I've solved all my problems. Progress isn't linear. There's an ebb and flow. You'll still screw up from time to time. You'll just be a bit better at the whole thing. The lessons from that period matriculate inside of your noggin, whether you're aware of it or not. And would you believe it? That's what happened to me. All that explicit action where I tried to limit my internet use was burned into my subconscious, and slowly everything came around again. It didn't magically poof into existence, just tackling one thing at a time at my own pace. I stopped going online in the morning. I quit activities when I felt the onset of mental fog. I did more things away from the screen. I went on fewer rabbit hole content binges. It just wasn't appealing anymore. I got bored with consuming content, so I started making my own. Yeah. By giving myself the offline space to internally work through feelings preventing me from producing, I discovered they were the same roadblocks that kept me consuming in the first place. And now doing this, who knows how this experience will affect everything else or what it means. Although I still use some of these practices to a degree, I can't remember the last time I used the internet on my phone out of boredom or whatever. There's no system in place. It's the culmination of experience taking those pieces and fitting them in a way that made sense to me. Wow, thanks, I'm cured. Look, don't give up is all I'm saying. Don't give up in general. Building habits is challenging. This won't be the last time you mess up or waste time online, and that's fine. Or maybe it will, I don't know. When you think you've regressed or screwed up, no. Self-compassion. Aim to get a little bit better and don't beat yourself up when you aren't. Nobody's perfect. Don't give up, keep trying, and find what's meaningful to you. That seems to work for me. It's not enough to just know the information or what you should do. You gotta feel it in your bones in a way that carries significance to you. I can't give you those reasons, both in a micro sense and in a macro sense, that maybe this ethos doesn't apply to you. You're welcome to do what you want. Aside from describing literally what I did and what I took away from it, I don't have the answers for you. Sorry. It's called self-development because it's your development. I can't develop you. None of these influencers can. This is why I am not a personal development influencer. Don't give up. That's it. That's the video.
It doesn't matter what comes. Fresh goes better in life. With mentors fresh and full of life. Nothing gets to you. Staying fresh, staying cool. With mentors fresh and full of life. Fresh goes better. Mentors fresh. Fresh goes better with Mentos. I'm losing my mind!
Mentos, the fresh maker.